He was fixing his Wi-Fi. She called the cops. What happens next exposes more than just wires. 911, what's your emergency? Madison Holbrook didn't hesitate. There's a man outside my neighbor's house. I think he's trying to break in. He's messing with something by the wires, like tools and stuff. She stood barefoot in her upstairs bedroom, phone pressed to her ear with one hand, the other parting the blinds just enough to see out. The late afternoon sun stretched long across the backyard fences of Norman, Oklahoma, a quiet neighborhood of beige homes, dog walkers, and neatly trimmed lawns. The kind of place where people left garage doors open and waved from their driveways. The kind of place where suspicious was a word rarely used out loud. The dispatcher's voice was calm. Can you describe him? Yeah, Madison squinted. He's a black guy, mid-30s maybe, hoodie, jeans, kind of tall. He's on the side of the house, near the meter box or something. There was a pause. Do you know if he lives there? Madison hesitated, her voice quieter now. No. I don't think so. The guy who used to live there moved out last month. I don't recognize this one. But that wasn't entirely true. Madison had seen the new guy a couple of times, once pulling into the driveway in a black Toyota, another time jogging early in the morning. But she'd never introduced herself, and he'd never said a word either. And now he was crouched next to the house with some kind of toolkit, twisting wires, completely focused. She turned slightly, catching a reflection of herself in the mirror. Loose ponytail, oversized hoodie, face flushed. A sliver of guilt tugged at her, but she pushed it down. What if he wasn't supposed to be there? She was just being cautious. Responsible, even. She looked back out the window. The man hadn't moved much, just adjusting some kind of small device in his hand. A few cords, definitely something electrical. Maybe he was trying to cut power. Disable a camera? The dispatcher spoke again. Officers are on the way. Stay inside and don't engage. Madison's heart thumped. She backed away from the blinds and sat on her bed, still holding the phone like it might buzz again with some kind of update. She imagined the patrol car rolling in slow, maybe lights off, maybe with their weapons drawn. Her pulse quickened with both anxiety and a strange sense of control. She was helping, right? Down the hall, her mom called out. Everything okay, Mads? Madison shouted back. Yeah, I'm fine. She didn't want to explain, not yet. Not until she knew for sure something was wrong. Not until it was confirmed. Then came the sound, a distant whoop of sirens, faint at first, but growing closer. Madison stood and went back to the window. The man was still there, still working on whatever he was working on. He hadn't noticed anything yet, but he would soon. She felt her stomach tighten. Maybe this was a mistake. Maybe he really did live there. Maybe he was just fixing something. Too late now. But just as the sirens pulled onto the block, someone else was watching too, from just a few doors down, and her reaction would change everything. Darius Whitfield wiped the sweat off his forehead with the sleeve of his hoodie. Oklahoma heat had a way of clinging to your skin, even in late spring. He crouched down again beside the gray siding of his new home, squinting at the little mess of cables he'd been wrangling for the last 20 minutes. Come on, man, he muttered. He'd just switched providers, and the new Wi-Fi extender needed to be hardwired next to the utility box. Simple job. He could have waited for the technician, sure, but why pay for something he could handle himself? Tech was literally his job. He built networks for companies twice the size of this entire block. He tugged on the Ethernet cable, gave the box a quick tighten, then leaned back on his heels to check the signal on his phone. Still nothing. He sighed and looked around. It was a peaceful neighborhood, at least on the surface. Clean sidewalks, kids riding scooters a few blocks over, wind rustling the trees in the neighbor's yard. No one had said much since he moved in 2 weeks ago. A few nods, a wave here and there, mostly older families, mostly white. He didn't mind. He'd bought the house for the space, the schools, and the quiet. After growing up in Baton Rouge and spending years packed into apartments in Dallas, owning his own house, this house was more than a win. It was a goal met. And besides, he was used to being the new guy. He knew how to keep to himself. His phone pinged, still no connection. Darius leaned forward again, double-checking the cable. As he worked, he felt a twinge of paranoia, like someone was watching. He turned his head slowly, No one was in sight. The street looked empty. Still, the feeling stayed. He shook it off. Just nerves. Moving always came with some stress. New keys, new trash schedule, new faces. He'd get used to it. He stood up and dusted his jeans off, just as a faint sound broke the stillness. Sirens. His brows lowered. That was close. Too close. A moment later, a Norman police SUV turned the corner and cruised down the street. Lights on. Another one followed behind it. Then they slowed, right in front of his house. Darius blinked. His hands instinctively went up a little, still holding a small screwdriver. He took a cautious step back from the wall and let both arms hang loosely by his sides. 2 officers stepped out. A white male, maybe late 40s, with a buzz cut and sunglasses, and a younger black woman with her hair tied back tight under her cap. Both wore the navy blue uniform with the Norman PD patch on the sleeve. "Sir, can you step away from the side of the house?" the man barked. Darius raised his hands fully now, slowly. "This is my house. I live here." "Sir, we got a report of suspicious activity. Tools, wires, something about the meter box. I'm installing a Wi-Fi extender. I just switched to a new ISP. I'm not doing anything illegal." The woman officer narrowed her eyes slightly. "Do you have ID on you?" "It's inside. Look, the garage is open. My car's in there. Mail's on the porch. This is my property." But they didn't move yet. The man reached for his belt, not his gun, but his radio, and said something Darius couldn't hear. Darius's heart pounded, not out of guilt, but because he knew this script. He'd seen it play out in news clips too many times, and now here he was, in it. The younger officer, her name tag read Nguyen, stepped forward. "You said you live here. What's your name?" "Darius Whitfield. I closed on this place 2 weeks ago." She paused. "Can I check that against county records?" "Be my guest." She turned to her partner. "Let me run that." He muttered something and walked back to the car. Nguyen stayed. "I'm not trying to escalate," Darius said calmly. "I just don't understand how tightening a couple wires outside my own house gets me police attention." She tilted her head, studying him. "Neither do I. But we've had a few calls from this area lately. People jumpy. Sometimes too quick to call." Darius breathed out hard, shaking his head. "Figures." But while Nguyen was checking records and her partner was still suspicious, back in that second patrol car, something caught her attention on the call log, and it didn't sit right. Detective Carla Nguyen sat in the passenger seat of the second cruiser, laptop balanced on her knees. Her partner, Officer Landon Briggs, had already made up his mind. She could tell by the way he approached Darius, tight posture, firm voice, eyes scanning like he expected a weapon to appear from nowhere. But Carla was more patient. Something about this whole thing wasn't adding up. She clicked through the dispatch records again, same address, same caller, 3 times in the last month, all logged from the Holbrook residence. 2 unknown individuals near property lines, 1 unfamiliar car parked too long, all vague, all unfounded, all closed out as non-incidents. Now this? She glanced out at the young man standing calmly with his hands raised. His car matched the driveway. His name matched the deed. His demeanor didn't scream threat. He looked annoyed, a little tired, but calm. Carla stepped out and walked toward him, careful not to crowd. "You said your name's Darius Whitfield?" she asked. "Yes." "And you moved in when?" 2 weeks ago." "Do you have anything with your name on it inside the house? Even mail?" He nodded. "Yeah, I can grab it. I just didn't want to move while—" He gestured toward Briggs. Things were tense. Carla gave a half smile. Understandable. Briggs walked up, cutting in. "No warrants. Name matches the property owner, but we still have to check out the caller's report." "Caller said you were tampering with utilities," Carla said. Darius gestured toward the cables. "I'm installing a Wi-Fi extender. If I wanted to steal power, I wouldn't be doing it in broad daylight with a screwdriver and a Home Depot bag." Briggs narrowed his eyes. "Mind if we take a look inside the house?" Darius looked from Briggs to Carla. "Do I have to let you?" Carla shook her head. "Not unless we have probable cause, and we don't." There was a beat of awkward silence. Briggs didn't like that answer, but Carla wasn't budging. Darius lowered his hands slowly. "I'll get the mail, 1 second." He walked to the porch, careful not to move too fast, picked up 3 letters, held them up. "All addressed to me." Briggs finally backed off. All right, you're free to go. But Darius didn't move. You showed up like I was a criminal. No apology, no explanation. Briggs turned and walked back to the car. Carla stayed. I get it, she said quietly. This wasn't the best way to introduce ourselves. You think? I also think you're not the first person to deal with this, and something tells me you won't be the last. Darius scoffed, folding the mail. It's always the same story. Someone sees a black man with tools and assumes we're breaking into something instead of fixing it. Carla looked toward the Holbrook house. Madison was peeking through the blinds. You got kids? She asked. No, not yet. Well, if you ever do, I hope they get to grow up in a place where people ask questions before they make assumptions. She gave him a nod and turned to go. Darius stood there for a second, jaw clenched, phone still in his pocket. He didn't take pictures, didn't film the interaction. He wanted to, but something about this neighborhood made him hesitate. Carla climbed back into the cruiser. You done playing social worker? Briggs asked. She didn't respond. She just tapped the screen and pulled up the caller's info again. Same number, same girl, Madison Holbrook. Her name didn't raise flags, but the pattern did. Gwen narrowed her eyes. 3 calls about suspicious black males in a neighborhood where there had only been one new black family move-in. She picked up her phone and called it in. Yeah, I need the incident logs for the Holbrook address. All the way back to January if you can swing it. But just as Nguyen was about to drive away, her phone buzzed again, and the information she was about to get would push this story way past a misunderstanding. Detective Nguyen didn't like loose threads. She'd been with Norman PD long enough to know that some calls weren't just concerned citizen noise. Some had patterns, and patterns meant something bigger was happening, even when no one else was paying attention. Her phone buzzed with a text from records. 8 total calls from the Holbrook address in the last 5 months. 6 involved black males. None resulted in citations, arrests, or confirmed suspicious activity. Carla stared at the screen for a moment, her jaw tightening. Briggs glanced over. Something wrong? Not sure yet, she said, closing the screen, but I'm going to talk to the caller. He shrugged. Suit yourself. I've got paperwork. Madison's house wasn't far, just 3 lawns down, a gray 2-story with flower beds, a porch swing, and a silver Honda parked in the drive. Looked like any other house on the street. Quiet. Normal. Carla walked up and rang the bell. It opened a few seconds later. A tall man in a polo and jeans answered the door. Mr. Holbrook. Early 40s, cautious expression. Behind him, Madison appeared in the hallway, arms crossed, eyes wide. Detective Nguyen, she introduced, flashing her badge. Mind if I ask a few questions about a 911 call made today? Sure, he said, stepping aside. Come in. Carla entered the home. Air conditioning hummed quietly. Family photos lined the hallway walls. Beach trips, graduations, softball trophies. Is this about the guy next door? Mr. Holbrook asked. Yes. I understand your daughter called in a suspicious person? Madison's voice cut in before he could answer. I didn't know he lived there. I thought he was breaking in. Gwen turned to her. Can you tell me exactly what you saw? I saw him messing with wires. I panicked. I just thought, I didn't recognize him. Have you seen him before? Madison looked down. Once or twice, maybe, but he never said hi. Carla took a breath. We looked into past call logs. Your number's been linked to multiple reports over the past few months, all involving black individuals, and none of them turned out to be criminal activity. Silence fell over the room. Mr. Holbrook rubbed the back of his neck. We've just been trying to keep the neighborhood safe, that's all. Safe from what exactly? Carla asked gently. People walking their dogs? Sitting in cars? Madison spoke again, voice barely above a whisper. I didn't mean for it to become a thing. I just thought I was doing the right thing. You weren't, Carla said plainly. You could have gotten that man hurt, or worse. He was doing basic home maintenance, and now he's dealing with the embarrassment and stress of being accused in front of his own house. Madison looked stunned, like no one had ever told her she was wrong in such a direct way. Do you know what happens when calls like this keep stacking up? Carla continued. People lose trust in the system. Good officers get distracted chasing ghosts, and people like your neighbor feel like they don't belong in their own homes. Mr. Holbrook spoke, more defensive this time. Are you saying she shouldn't call when something looks off? She should call, Carla said, firm but calm. But she should also ask herself why it looked off in the first place. Would she have called if he looked like me? Like you? That question hung in the air like smoke. Madison's eyes began to water. She turned her face away. I didn't mean... I know, Carla said softly. But it's not about meaning well. It's about the damage done. She let the silence sit a moment longer. If I bring him here, your neighbor, would you be willing to speak to him directly? Madison looked at her father. He nodded slowly. Yes, I think that would be good. Carla left the house, not because she was done, but because she knew the next conversation had to happen face to face, and Darius deserved to be part of it. But before she knocked on his door, she paused, because even the strongest confrontations need the right moment, and this one would cut deep. Darius was on his porch, arms folded, staring out at the street like he was waiting for something or someone to make it make sense. A neighbor across the street gave him a quick, awkward nod as they pulled into their driveway. He didn't nod back. The mail was still clutched in his hand. Detective Nguyen walked up the path, slowly. You mind if I sit? She asked. He didn't answer right away, but after a moment, he gestured to the other patio chair. She sat. They send you to smooth it over? He asked, eyes still ahead. No, she said. I came because you deserve to know what's going on. Darius glanced at her now. All right. She pulled a folded printout from her pocket. This is a list of every 911 call placed by the Holbrook household in the last 5 months. 8 total. 6 about black individuals who were later cleared of any wrongdoing. Darius took the paper, looked it over in silence. 3 calls were about people walking past their property. 1 was a delivery guy. 1 was a kid selling fundraiser candy. The rest? People like you. Outside. Doing normal stuff. He sighed through his nose and leaned back in the chair. So it's not about me. It's about people like me. I'd say that's accurate. He was quiet again. Then, I've lived a version of this before. In Dallas, I had a neighbor call the cops because I had my hood up working on my car. Another time in Baton Rouge, someone asked if I was the landscaper when I was out front watering my own grass. Nguyen gave a small, dry chuckle. I've had people assume I was the nanny picking up my own niece. He nodded once. It wears on you. I know. He looked over at her. So what now? I spoke to Madison and her father. She's shaken, but I told them the truth. About the pattern. About how dangerous it can be. Darius tilted his head. She's scared? Yeah, but not in the way she thought she was before. There was a long pause between them. Then Nguyen added, They've agreed to talk with you, face to face. Darius's jaw tightened. Not sure I've got that in me today. You don't have to. I can take care of it. But he stood slowly. No, he said. Let's do it. Nguyen nodded. They walked together 3 houses down. As they reached the Holbrook door, it opened before they could knock. Madison stood there, looking smaller than she had earlier. Her father stood behind her. Darius took a breath. She started to speak, but her voice caught, so she tried again. I'm sorry. I really am. I didn't think. I just saw someone I didn't know, doing something I didn't understand, and I reacted. Darius didn't yell, didn't lecture. He just looked at her. You know how humiliating it is to have to explain yourself on your own front lawn, he said, to be seen as a threat for holding a screwdriver? Madison nodded, her face red. I do now. Mr. Holbrook stepped forward. We take responsibility, and we want to do better. Wanting isn't enough, Darius replied. It's the doing that matters. Madison met his eyes. Then help us. Tell us what to do differently. He paused. Start by saying hello. Next time, when you see someone you don't know, maybe don't assume the worst. Maybe ask who they are. Maybe realize they might be just like you, trying to live. Nguyen watched quietly from the steps. Then Darius said, That's all I've got for today. He turned and walked back down the path, slower this time, but steady. Nguyen followed. When they reached his house again, Darius looked back once more. The Holbrooks were still standing in the doorway, watching. They seem sincere, Nguyen said. They always do when the heat's on. You think she meant it? I think she's 17, and this world taught her something it shouldn't have. But the hardest part wasn't the apology. It was what came after, when the news died down and the neighborhood had to sit with what it really was. That night, the neighborhood group chat lit up. Anyone else see the cops earlier? What happened over on Elm? Everything okay with the new guy? Darius wasn't in the chat. He wasn't invited. But word spread quick in Crestview Park. Most folks didn't say anything out loud. They never did. They'd keep their thoughts to themselves, whisper them in kitchens, or mutter them during dog walks. But the silence now? It was louder than anything. Gwen filed her report and went home late. She didn't need to stay longer. The pieces were in motion. What came next wasn't a matter of policing. It was a matter of people. The following weekend, Crestview Park hosted its usual welcome social, a table of cookies and lemonade, folding chairs, neighbors chatting in polite circles. Darius showed up alone. No one approached him at first. They just smiled, offered brief nods, safe gestures, the kind that kept things nice. Madison arrived with her parents. She saw Darius near the snack table, standing beside a tray of bottled water, arms loosely crossed. She walked over. "Hey," she said. He glanced sideways. "Hey, I'm glad you came." He gave a short nod. "It's my neighborhood, too." Madison looked down, took a breath. "I've been thinking about what you said, and what I assumed that day. It wasn't just about you. It was about how I see people I don't know, and I'm trying to fix that." Darius studied her a moment. "That's good." She shifted her weight. "Would you maybe come speak at school sometime about what happened?" He raised an eyebrow. "You sure your school wants to hear that kind of truth?" "I don't know," she said, "but I think they need to." Darius looked back toward the other neighbors. A few were watching, pretending not to. "All right," he said. "If they'll have me, I'll come." Her face lit up, just a little. "Thank you." She turned to walk away, then stopped. "Hey, one more thing." "Yeah? I know you don't owe me anything, but I'm really sorry for what I started that day." He paused. "You didn't just make a phone call," he said. "You made a decision, and that decision could have cost me more than just a peaceful afternoon. I'm alive to talk about it. A lot of people aren't." She didn't argue, didn't cry. She just nodded, then walked back to her parents. Across the lawn, Detective Nguyen had arrived with her niece. She caught Darius's eye and gave a quick two-finger wave. He smiled back this time. He walked over. "How's it feel?" "That's all," she asked, like everybody's trying not to say the thing out loud. "Yeah, that's about right." A neighbor, Mr. Renshaw, finally walked up and extended a hand. "Darius, right? Heard you're the new guy? Sorry we haven't stopped by sooner." Darius shook his hand. "Appreciate it. You in tech or something?" "Something like that." They chatted for a minute. Then another neighbor joined in, and another. It wasn't an apology, not directly, but it was something. And Darius could feel it shift, just a little. Not a celebration, not forgiveness, just people showing up when they didn't have to. As the sun dipped below the rooftops, the kids ran through sprinklers. Laughter replaced tension. For the first time since moving in, Darius felt like he wasn't just surviving in the neighborhood. He was part of it. Not because he proved anything, but because someone finally listened. But even after the lemonade dried up and the folding chairs were packed away, one truth remained. Nothing changes unless people stop hiding behind silence and start facing the mirror. Weeks passed. No more sirens, no more sideways glances from across the street. Darius started to notice the small changes first. Mr. Renshaw waved without hesitation now. The older couple next door brought over fresh tomatoes from their backyard garden. A kid from down the block knocked on his door, selling chocolate bars for the school band. He bought 4. It wasn't a transformation. The air didn't suddenly clear. There were still looks, still hesitations. But the silence was thinner now, and for the first time, it felt like people were willing to sit in the discomfort a little longer, instead of rushing past it. Madison followed through. She invited him to her high school civics class. He stood in front of 30 juniors and told his story, about that afternoon, about the screwdriver, about how quickly people's fear can outpace their facts. And they listened, really listened. Some students asked questions. Others said nothing. But when he walked out, the teacher, a middle-aged man with tired eyes, shook his hand and said, "I think that meant more than you know." Madison sent him a thank you card the next day. She didn't have to, but she did. Detective Van Nguyen kept in touch. She swung by now and then, always without warning, sometimes just to say hello. Once, she brought her niece again. They talked on the porch about college, coffee, and what it means to be safe in a place that was never built with you in mind. Darius still had the paper with the list of calls from the Holbrooks. He kept it folded in the drawer by the front door, not out of spite, but as a reminder. Because forgetting is easy when it's not your story, and that was the real problem. The truth is, what happened that day wasn't rare. It didn't go viral. No protests, no news crews, just one more black man questioned for existing where someone thought he didn't belong. But it could have gone differently, and that's the part that stuck with him the most. It almost did. So what now? Now, it's not just about Darius. It's about everyone watching this, everyone who's ever looked out a window and made a call based on fear before facts, everyone who's ever chosen silence when they could have spoken up, everyone who's ever convinced themselves that not meaning harm was the same thing as doing no harm. It's not. Accountability starts where comfort ends. And progress? It doesn't show up all at once. It shows up in moments, conversations on porches, awkward truths spoken out loud, teenagers willing to learn what the world never taught them right the first time. So ask yourself, what do you assume when you see someone who doesn't look like you? What story do you create in your mind before you even speak? And most importantly, what would have happened if the cops hadn't asked questions that day? What if Darius had raised his voice just once? What if Nguyen hadn't gone back and checked the records? What if no one had listened? The next time you feel that flicker of suspicion or fear, pause. Ask why. And then ask better questions, because that's where change begins. Let's stop leaving the work of understanding to the people most affected. Let's do better, for real this time. If this story made you think, even for a second, share it. Talk about it. Don't let it die in silence.